I need some help from an expert here, Stugotz, because there is something happening in America's most popular sports that I believe is being underreported, is not getting nearly enough attention. And it's that the defensive backs with the highest grades in the sport are all white. So I brought in a white man, Matthew Berry, to come on here and on behalf of Peacock, join us and explain to us what the hell is going on, that this can happen quietly in the NFL, where the defensive back position has been overtaken by Riley Moss and Harrison Smith, and that fast Dolphin that's faster than Tyreek Hill, Ethan Bonner. And who the hell, how is this happening? Weren't we talking last year about Iowa's Cooper DeJean? We were talking about that guy was going to dominate. Those are the 4 highest grades going into Sunday. Matthew, good to see you. What the hell's happening?
You know what? It's been a weird year, Dan. It's been an unbelievably weird year, top to bottom. So just add this one to the list for sure.
What is weirdest? Tell me why you're seeing weird everywhere you look.
I just think, you know what I mean? Listen, at the end of the day, we're talking about a sport that is played with a leather ball in a oblong shape. Weird stuff is going to happen. And you've got 22 men trying to fight over that ball in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And it's a game that's not officiated consistently. And so something that's legal in one game isn't legal in the next, and it's all over the place. And so I think just all those things combined, plus the schedule is weird, right? You've got Friday games and Monday games and Thursday games and Saturday day games. And it's all over the place. So, but it's fun. And it's why we love the sport. And it's why we follow it. And it keeps you entertained.
It is so good what he's saying, because you do realize, right, given that there are only 11 minutes of action and most of it is going for it from first to second to third and goal, like 3 inches at a time, it's as random as us dropping a football from a helicopter and just having 11 guys on each side just run at each other and try and fight over it.
Hey, I mean, I will tell you, I have had in my career, and I know you guys have sources as well. I have literally had coaches that are sources from mine that will text me and saying, this guy's going to have a huge game. This guy is, we have found something in the defense, and we think this guy is somebody that we're going to really target, and he's going to have a great game. And I don't want to give up my source, so I go on TV and I'm like, you got to start this guy. This guy's going to have a huge game. Blah, 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 for whatever stats that I have. But I know secretly the coach has told me, oh, yeah, we're targeting this guy. And then, first play, he drops one. Next time, and then he has some dumb penalty. And next thing you look up at the end of the game, he's 2 for 16 on 3 targets. I've had NFL coaches tell me, like, we planned on this. This is what we practiced all week. And then it doesn't go anywhere near what they expect.
This seems like insider trading. I don't know. This guy, how are you supposed to win against this guy in his damn leagues? Like,
working the sources, Dano.
If he's going out there.
Stugotz, you want to ask him who his sources are?
I do. Who are they, Matt?
How does this work with you? Are you somebody who's actually soliciting fantasy advice? Like, are they, you're not going to answer Stugotz's question of who it is, but are they people who like fantasy?
They are not. I mean, it depends on, I have sources all over, right? And so, listen, I'm not claiming that I'm like a Mike Florio or a Schefter or anyone like this, where I have the kind of sources that they do. But I have enough, and I don't ask a specific fantasy question. I ask a football question, but they know who I am and they know what I do and they understand why I'm asking. And so, I might say something like, pick a player. You guys are in Miami. I might say something like, again, I'm not claiming I have Dolphin sources, but just like I might say something, hey, love what you guys are doing with Achane. Do you think he continues to get the majority of the workload, or are you going to see some Mostert and Jalen Wright mixed in? You know what I mean? Like I'll ask sort of a football question that I will then interpret for fantasy. That kind of stuff.
It's a leading question.
It is. The whole thing's a bogus sham. He's out here cheating, and it's insider trading, and the man's got all access to all the good things you want in this sport.
I wish I had it.
I'll tell you a story. I remember when I first got to ESPN, I joined this league that was what's called the famed War Room League, which is all the NFL experts and reporters and insiders and everything like that. I remember one time, and Trent Dilfer, this was when Trent was at the team, and at ESPN, and Trent was in the league. And I remember texting Trent, and I were trying to do a running back for wide receiver trade, and I was trying to get a running back for him for a wide receiver. And he's just like, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds fair. Let's finalize it this afternoon. I'm like, okay, got it. And so that afternoon, I texted him and said, hey, Trent, are we good for this trade? I'll send it through. And he goes, no, deal's off. And I go, why is the deal off? And he goes, well, I talked to his quarterback. He hates him. He hates the wide receiver. And so I'm just like, oh, great. There you go. And it just sort of let me know that I was kind of in a different world there as well. And I'll tell you guys off air who the quarterback and wide receiver were. But yeah, and that wide receiver didn't last on that team very long. So it is, things like that happen. But
this
again,
should be illegal. All of this should be illegal. I don't think Matthew Berry should be allowed to do any of this.
But this is what I'm trying to tell you, Dan, illegal. Is that like you'd think it would be illegal, and that I have the answers to the test, but it doesn't often happen. It doesn't always happen that way. It sometimes goes awry. I'll quickly tell you my favorite fantasy football story of all time. I've told this before. I've written about it, and it's not even my story, but this will go to exactly what we're talking about. So my friend Matt Hasselbeck, who I worked with for many years at ESPN as well. Matt played fantasy when he was with the Seattle Seahawks, and in 2009. I know. Hang on though. This is worth it for the story. All right. Look, and so Hasselbeck in 2009 drafts himself and his former Green Bay Packer teammate Brett Favre as his quarterbacks that year. That was the first year Favre was in Minnesota. And if you remember, Favre was awesome his first year in Minnesota, NFL and fantasy-wise. Week 5 of that 2009 season, Hasselbeck has a decision. Favre is playing the Rams, who were one of the worst teams in the NFL that year, and he's playing the Jaguars. Hasselbeck's playing the Jaguars, who have won 2 straight. Hasselbeck has missed the previous 2 games with a back injury. And so he decides to bench himself in fantasy and start Brett Favre. In that season, that particular game, Favre throws just 1 touchdown pass against the Vikings. He throws an interception. Adrian Peterson has a huge game. Favre finishes the 18th best quarterback in fantasy that week. Meanwhile, Matt Hasselbeck throws 4 touchdown passes, like 250 yards, finishes the week as the number 1 quarterback in fantasy as the Seahawks wax the Jaguars, sitting on his own bench. Think about that. When you think about that for a second, Hasselbeck had watched all the film. He knew the game plan. He was touching the ball on every offensive play. He could audible at any moment. Matt Hasselbeck had as much control over a fantasy football game as any fantasy manager in the history of the game, and still got it wrong. And Matt told me that story, and I said, I love that story, and he's given me the permission to tell it, and so I've written about it, and I've told that one before. But like, that's the ultimate story. Like, again, you think you know what's going to happen, and then it just doesn't.
So this week we had a weird play in just the NFL and in fantasy, the hook and ladder play, where Josh Allen both gets a passing touchdown and a receiving touchdown on the same play, which I'm sure had fantasy implications for a lot of people now coming towards the end of the season. Can you think of a play just from personal experience or stories that you're like, how did they do that in this play? How did they get so many points? Worst case scenario, no one could have seen this coming.
I don't know that any one specific play. I mean, there's definitely been like, nutty plays over the years. I don't know if there's any one specific play that I can think of that is like, how'd they get the most points? I mean, that was sort of crazy, right? Is that Josh Allen becomes, I think, like only the 3rd player in history.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second, Matthew.
Go
Just
ahead.
give me a second. I'm going to have to kick him out of the room.
Should.
There.
Wait, what?
Minor penalty, 2 minutes, asshole.
I mean, not for being an asshole.
Not you, Matthew.
The way that he framed it, too, is
Bad
like
question,
you had to
yeah.
cite a specific example.
Yeah.
When there's been plenty of weird plays that affected, like the Brian Westbrook play, where he takes a knee before crossing the goal line. That had
Right.
huge fantasy implications.
Yes, but give Matthew credit because he was trying to play along. I mean, he was. You knew it was a ridiculous question, right?
Not just ridiculous, though. He didn't have a good answer. And I guess he's just asking you sort of for a legendary bad beat story after you just gave one that is the most legendary one. So it becomes a bit hard to come up with whatever second place is to that particular story.
I will say, though, you mentioned that Brian Westbrook play. I wrote about this one in my book, which is there's a big league of casino owners where the buy, and this was this is like, 20 years ago, but there was the buy-in in that league, at least for that year, the Brian Westbrook year, was $100,000 and like a 12-team league. And so I met one of the guys in that league, and he was telling me about that. And that play, if you guys remember, it was in the fantasy playoffs, and Brian Westbrook it's going against the Cowboys, and he's on his way down. And he's got a touchdown right there. And at the very last second, he takes a knee to preserve the win for the Eagles, but doesn't score the touchdown. So I talked to him, and this guy tells me, he's like, what was your reaction? And he was like down 5, and he had Westbrook, and it was his last player. So if Westbrook scores the touchdown, he wins his semifinal matchup. And he just turns to me and goes, yeah, that knee cost me $600,000.
Ouch. Ouch.
I later met Ryan Westbrook, and I told him that story, and he just laughed. He says, that guy should have called me. He goes, we could have figured, if I'd known it was going to cost that much, we could have figured something out. I asked him, I said, Brian, how often does that play come up in your life? And he goes, every single day. Every single day, somebody mentions that
Again,
play.
all of
me
it, all
and
of
how
that
it cost
sounds
them.
illegal. Pete Rose was denied the Hall of Fame for less than all these crimes that
lot
Matthew
less.
Berry is out here just admitting to freely and openly.
Dan, do I need a lawyer? Should I get
You've botched this up and down. You mentioned Westbrook. It made me think of Westbrook-Ikhine and the idea that a Titans receiver has been, he's only got 20 catches this year, but 8 are touchdowns. Can you give me a name in the history of fantasy that you most associate with sort of that kind of ridiculousness I'm talking about
Another
here?
one.
Yeah,
Mike
I mean, honestly, it's sort of happening
Minor
at the
penalty,
same
2
time.
minutes, asshole.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He's going through the same thing right now. I mean, he's actually getting less target share than Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, NWI. But yeah, he's been on an unbelievable run.
Matthew, before we let you go, who's the guy that disappointed you the most this year on your fantasy team? Every year I walk around, I'm muttering some guy's name under my breath. For the second consecutive year, for me, it's Christian Watson. How about you?
Look, Tank Dell's been a bummer for me. I loved Tank Dell last year. He was one of the guys that came through for me. I liked him again this year. It hasn't worked out. He's had 2 games this year with 15 or more fantasy points. He's wide receiver 54 on a points per game basis. Single-digit fantasy points in almost 60% of his games. Like, it's just, for whatever reason, like, we thought the Texans' offense would regress. We didn't think it would regress this much. And just Tank Dell just hasn't been a thing this year the way he was last year. When the injury to Diggs happened, you thought, oh, well, maybe finally now it'll be Tank Dell time. And it just hasn't worked out that way. So still love Tank Dell as a player, but fantasy-wise, it's been a massive disappointment.
All right, check out the Fantasy Football Hour with Matthew Berry. It is on Peacock. Matthew, we appreciate the time as always. Yes, sir?
Of course. I have one last question for you, Stugotz, and it's really a question for Dan. I have a question for Dan.
All right, he's in the penalty box, so.
When does Dan get out of the penalty box? Can we bring him out of the?
Yeah, we can get him out early. Yeah,
because I have an important question for him. Specific.
All right. Okay. So hold on a second, because Chris just walked into the penalty box. Look at that. Look how quick it was. Dan is back now.
All right.
So it wasn't 2 minutes. Dan still owes 35 seconds. I have an important question for you before you ask your important question of Dan. Can you write a chapter in my next book? I know you're a New York Times best-selling author. What do you think?
Sure, I'd be happy to. To be honest with you, I'm going to phone that one in.
Yeah.
But because I assume that'll be how the rest of the book is gone as well. But yeah sure.
All right.
Put me down for a chapter. I'm in.
All right. Join the club, the phone club, and go ahead. Ask your question of Dan.
All right, Dan, here's my question. Earlier in the year, in my last appearance on the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz, I pitched the idea of a fantasy football league that I would play with Stugotz and the rest of the guys on the show. And so on air, Stugotz said, I love the idea. I'm in. And so Stugotz and I were texting back and forth. Took him like a couple days to get back to me. And eventually he says, like, I'm sorry, I'm going to be bad at setting this up. Can I connect you with Chris Cody and he'll set it up? And I said, you bet. So then Stugotz puts me on a text chain with Chris and the 3 of us. And I'm like, hey, Chris, let me know a good time to talk. We'll figure this out. I get blown off. Then I text again, completely ghosted. So I'm just curious, is it me or are Chris and Stugotz just terrible on text generally?
Well, I would say there are a couple of things here. Yes, though 2 of those people are 2 of the least reliable finishers we have around here in a company that prides itself on not finishing much of anything. But also we have partnership conflicts that I believe make that impossible. And instead of doing that in your face and telling you directly, our guys just hid under their desks.
Well, I passed it along to Chris.
Yeah. So you punted.
Yeah.
But what's weird,
he hid.
We should do it, though. We should do it in the shadows, since you're doing so many illegal things during this segment anyway. We should do it. We should both risk getting in trouble with our sugar daddies because we've gone into cahoots on playing dirty fantasy in the corners.
Well, the reason I went to Chris is Matthew wanted to do the draft on air, and Dan would love that.
Okay, so again, all of this could have been communicated to you so that you wouldn't just have to ask me these questions in a way that embarrass all of us publicly, because I'm looking at you,
clear,
Chris
Dan,
Cody.
this is mostly about embarrassing Chris and Stugotz, not you. So please.
I can't be embarrassed.
You know what? I applaud all such efforts. Thank you. Yeah. Well done, as always, Matthew Berry. We appreciate your time. You are in all of our fantasies.
I love you guys.
All right.
Talk soon.
We love you too. Sorry.